Yep, you're looking at it right. Normally we're 6:30 Central at this time, but tonight THV 11 is your election central. And tonight we're taking a deep dive into the special election now underway for the city of Little Rock's proposed penny tax. If you're still unsure about where you stand on the proposal, this is your opportunity to hear from people on both sides of the issue. But first, THV 11's Rolly Hoyt breaks down what you need to know about the plan.
Let's start with what is up for a vote. Under the resolution approved by the Little Rock Board of Directors, voters will decide whether to approve a 1% sales tax. If voters say yes, the total sales tax, which includes county and state, will go up from 9% this year to 9.675% next year. You heard it was a penny tax, but an old sales tax expires this year, so that's why it doesn't even out to 10%. Simply put, it'll cost you about 68 cents more for every $100 you spend in Little Rock. So that brings us to when. If approved, the new tax would begin January 1st of next year and would remain in effect for the next decade, and only a decade, because that's what the city board demanded. In total, it's expected to raise more than $500 million for the city. So who is behind this proposal? Well, it's the brainchild of Mayor Frank Scott Jr. as part of his Rebuild the Rock initiative that he unveiled earlier this year. As for why Mayor Scott wants to make it happen, his proposal breaks down to 10 key groups that will receive funding under the plan. The meat and potatoes: public safety, economic development, capital improvements, and infrastructure. We're talking things like a new fire station and repaving streets. Then some progressive ideas: affordable housing, early childhood education, and homelessness. And a few quality of life treats like parks and recreation, golf and fitness, and upgrades for the zoo, including a new giraffe exhibit. As for where, well, that's easy, the city of Little Rock. But let's focus on where that would put Little Rock compared to surrounding cities. If approved, the new tax rate would still be on par with what we see in other cities in the region and even our neighboring communities. Back to you.
Well done, Rolly. Thank you for breaking down the basics of the plan. Let's take a look now at how much a 1% tax will cost the average person. How much money are we really talking about here? Well, let's say you spend $1,000 a month on taxable goods. You know, things like groceries, clothing, services like a gym membership maybe. If you're paying a penny more for those items, the additional tax is going to cost you $10 more a month. Adding it up, that means an extra $120 over an entire year. Well, keep in mind, some people would end up paying more, others less. It just depends on how much you actually spend each month. According to estimates, the penny tax is expected to bring in around $53 million each year for the city. And again, if approved, the tax will stay in place for the next decade. Again, this proposed penny sales tax is part of Mayor Frank Scott Jr.'s Rebuild the Rock initiative. He's backing this tax increase, and he's not alone. Marlisa Goldsmith spoke with proponents of the sales tax who say these funds would help the capital city keep up with the momentum of our growth.
It's been a hotly contested debate over the past 6 months. Little Rock Mayor Frank Scott Jr. asking voters to support the city's $530 million sales tax proposal. The Rebuild the Rock penny sales tax initiative would replace the current sales tax that's set to expire at the end of this year.
We have to understand this is a replacement initiative. We have a 3/8 sales tax that is going to expire because the voters said they only wanted to keep it for 10 years and then the opportunity to renew again. And so this gives us the opportunity to renew the 3/8 sales tax, but also with a modest increase.
Numbers and money aside, Mayor Scott says the focus of his plan is about long-term growth.
Everything that a city needs to grow, this sales tax has it in it.
Over the past decade, the city has calculated a growth rate of about 5%. According to the most recent census, for the first time in our history, the capital city has surpassed the 200,000 mark. To keep this momentum going, Mayor Scott says the bottom line is it'll take money.
63 parks have not seen an increase in their maintenance dollars since I was a young kid growing up in Southwest Little Rock.
What would those parks look like with a massive infusion of money to improve that infrastructure? And I think those are the things that I would encourage people to take a look at.
Gabe Holstrom with the Downtown Little Rock Partnership sees the benefits in voting for the sales tax. An estimated $12 million would be allocated to downtown parking decks, $5 million toward a 15-acre park downtown, and another $5.5 million toward the Downtown Ambassador Safety Program.
Ambassador programs in general are not unique to Little Rock. These exist in major cities all across the United States. We want to replicate that model to provide people who are coming out at night a sense of security.
Just last month, the historic Crump Park celebrated the grand opening of a brand new splash pad. This project was funded by the 3/8 sales tax passed by voters back in 2011. And these are the type of investments Mayor Scott wants to see supported by the Rebuild the Rock penny sales tax.
This sales tax is more than just about the investments. It's about creating opportunity, not just for my generation, but for 2 and 3 generations behind me.
In Little Rock, Marlisa Goldsmith, THV 11 News.
Thank you, Marlisa. But now, like any issue or proposal, the Rebuild the Rock tax isn't without its opponents. And for those, we hear from Ashley Godwin.
As Mayor Frank Scott Jr. pushes for his 1% sales tax increase, there are some, including city leaders, who are questioning if this is the right move for Little Rock.
I'm not worried about the impact of this tax on me. I mean, it'll be negligible. But somebody should stand up for the folks that, you know, they're working 1 or 2 jobs and trying to feed their families.
Patrick Flanagan lives in Little Rock and has voted against the sales tax increase. He's concerned about paying more because prices on everyday items have already been rising.
And having the tax put on them right when food is inflationary, I mean, it's just a bad thing, and to me it's a moral issue.
There's a real question, do we really need it?
Little Rock Vice Mayor Lance Hines is also against the penny tax proposal. He tried to keep the plan from ever getting on the ballot and now backs an opposition group called Responsible Taxation for Little Rock. Hines doesn't agree with raising taxes during the pandemic, especially when a large portion of the money would go towards parks and the Little Rock Zoo.
The zoo is getting $40 million, $30 million for a giraffe exhibit and another smaller exhibit, and $10 million to operate on. It doesn't make sense. The priorities are out of whack.
There's other ways to help the zoo. I mean, it's just not, it's a fine thing, but it's not above my priority of respecting poor people and working people.
Vice Mayor Hines also says the city of Little Rock is in a surplus of millions of dollars from last year and the beginning of this year, again questioning the need for a tax increase. Instead, he proposes another option that wouldn't raise taxes, just keep them at the current rate.
I honestly think the only thing that we could justify is going out and asking to renew our 3/8 cent to keep doing 10 years worth of capital projects.
In Little Rock, Ashley Godwin, THV 11 News.
Okay, we've covered what the tax is and what it will do. We've heard from both sides. All that's left to do is vote. But there are a few things to know before heading to polls, especially if you plan on voting early. Unlike November's election, early voting only lasts a week and is only taking place at a few locations. You can vote at the Pulaski County Regional Building across the street from the courthouse. You can also cast your ballot at one of these 6 library sites spread out across the city. The voting sites will be open from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. with no early voting on Saturday or Sunday. You can also request to vote absentee, but there is a new deadline to get that in.
Also, what's different is that anybody who requests an absentee ballot, they have to have it in our office the Friday before the election.
So for absentee voters, handing those ballots in person, that means getting them in by this Friday. If you are mailing in those ballots, they have to be received by the county clerk's office before 7:30 p.m. on Election Day, which is a week from today. Let's hope the weather cooperates, Tom.
I think it certainly will. What time does early voting start, Craig?
7:30.
7:30. All right. So tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, 68 degrees. No rain in the forecast. In fact, a lot of sunshine. Our afternoon high temperature gets close to 90 if you're going to be voting early tomorrow. I'll tell you what, the forecast is going to be very similar for the rest of the week, heading into the weekend and even early next week. You've heard us talk about the lack of rain or rain in the forecast. Here is your extended outlook. Shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. In fact, early morning temperatures the next 2 to 3 mornings will drop off into the lower 60s. Sir, that is nice and comfortable for getting out
voting or going for a walk or going for a jog, taking your dog out to the dog park, whatever you would like to do. Current temperatures currently in the 80s, a few low 90s, will drop off to 68 tonight. We may see a shower in northwest Arkansas early in the morning tomorrow morning. We'll talk about the rest of the week and maybe even the next chance of rain coming up in just a few moments. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Tom. Well, before we wrap up our in-depth look at Little Rock's tax proposal, we want to hear from you. We're asking what you think about the proposed penny tax. And here's what some people had to say. We heard from Marcus, who wrote, "How could anyone be against our city getting improvements? Mayor Scott shouldn't be penalized because our last mayor did nothing for our city other than ask for a raise every year. He has a great plan for the people of Little Rock." Then there was Bill, who said, "The mayor said the city would have enough money if he closed 2 golf courses. What about that promise? Bring back the golf courses." There you go. Keep sharing your thoughts with us. What do you think about Little Rock's tax proposal? Let us know. 501-376-1111. Love to hear from you. And if you missed any of that or want to see it again, we're going to have all of these stories posted on our website, thb11.com, and on the THB11 app. You'll also be able to watch the full special on the THB11 YouTube channel.
THV11 is Election Central, and tomorrow is the big day for Little Rock's special election. In just 24 hours, we will know if we'll have a new tax on shopping here in the capital city. THV11's Ashley Godwin shows us the turnout so far.
Tonight was Mayor Frank Scott Jr.'s last push for his proposed sales tax because tomorrow is the special election. So he has volunteers out here calling, texting people to make sure to go out and vote.
But we got to have the resources to fuel the growth.
Today was the final day of early voting for Mayor Frank Scott Jr.'s proposed sales tax. His last effort to get people to the polls was a text-to-vote event.
So this has been a brainchild of the city of Little Rock and its residents and what they want to revitalize our city, to rebuild our city out of this pandemic and truly lift our city to higher heights.
And I have talked to people, and some people will tell you that they don't want to do the tax. So every time you turn around, they want to do taxes. I said, man, you can pick a penny up off the ground every day. It's not about the penny tax, what it's going to do for the communities.
Some are worried about what the increase in taxes will do to small businesses. Mark Abernathy owns Localuna and Red Door, and he posted his opposition through an email blast. He says restaurants are still recovering, and with the tax on food rising, plus an additional sales tax, he is concerned.
Well, I'm asking each and every person, please get out and vote. You want to invest in your city. You want to make sure that your voice is heard.
So far, less than 7% of eligible voters in Little Rock have cast a ballot for this issue. For THV11, I'm Ashley Godwin.
Thanks so much, Ashley. The polls open tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning, and we'll, of course, have full coverage for you on all our newscasts right here on THV11.
Today is Little Rock's special election for the proposed 1% sales tax, backed by Mayor Frank Scott Jr. Polls close in a little more than an hour at 7:30. THV11's Ashley Godwin has been following the election, and now we look to what happens next as these polls start to wind down.
That's right, Rolly. There is winding down at the polls, but if you still want to get out and vote, the polls do close at 7:30, so you still have time. And make sure you check your precinct location, because we've had some people come up to the Pulaski County Regional Building. It's not open for voting, so make sure you check that before you get out. But right behind me, the Election Commission is counting absentee ballots right now. They're getting a head start on making sure they don't have to stay late counting those ballots. But let's look at the numbers for this special election. We only had less than 7% of people, eligible voters in Little Rock, vote early. And out of the 400 absentee ballots that were submitted for this special election, around 200 came back to be cast. So it seemed like it wasn't a really great turnout, but I talked to an election commissioner, and she said that that was not the case, that usually in an election like this, it's usually around 6% of total voter turnout, and we exceeded that in early voting.
Normally a typical election in City of Little Rock elections, and that does not count for Cowell's election, Central Arkansas Library, the average turnout is 6%. So we've surpassed that average just with early voting, so that's pretty significant.
And Starr also told me that West Little Rock had the biggest turnout for early voting, and she expects between 10 and 14% of total votes in this special election. And the Election Commission, like I said, is counting those absentee ballots right now. They'll get started on the early voting ballots here around 7:30, but we're going to be here checking in and making sure we get those results to you. Live in Little Rock, I'm Ashley Godwin.
The countdown is on as we wait for results in Little Rock's special election for the proposed 1% sales tax backed by Mayor Frank Scott Jr.
Polls closed at 7:30 this evening, and the Voting Commission just reconvened their meeting moments ago. And TV 11's Ashley Godwin has been following this election and joins us live at the Pulaski County Administration Building with an update on the results. Ashley.
Craig, Marlisa, like you said, the Election Commission had been in recess a couple of times because not all the precincts had in their votes, but we do have unofficial results. As of right now, 41% are yes for the increased sales tax, 59% no. Again, these are unofficial results. We'll have the official results as soon as all the precincts get in their numbers. But this day has been a long time coming for those people who've worked on the increased sales tax proposal and the people who made their voices heard.
So we're excited. So we've been everywhere from College Station to Chenal.
Polls opened at 7:30 this morning, and the mayor went to several election sites to greet voters. This sales tax has been his brainchild during his administration, hoping to bring in more revenue for the city's parks, education, and the zoo.
As we always are focused on how we unite, we grow, and transform the city.
During early voting, less than 7% of eligible voters in Little Rock cast their ballots, and around 200 absentee ballots were submitted. While these aren't great numbers, Election Commission Chairwoman Christy Starr said this exceeds our typical numbers for an election like this.
Normally, a typical election in City of Little Rock elections, and that does not count for Cowles elections, Central Arkansas Library, the average turnout is 6%. So we've surpassed that average just with early voting. So that's pretty significant.
She added West Little Rock had the biggest turnout for early voting, and she expects our total voter count will be between 10 and 14% for this election. We will have those official statistics later this week.
We know that your vote counts and it matters.
We did catch up with Mayor Frank Scott Jr. earlier this afternoon, and he said whether or not the sales tax passes, he will continue to grow Little Rock and unite the city, and we will be here all night. And when we get those official results, we will cut back in and make sure you know what the results are. Live in Little Rock, I'm Ashley Godwin.
And our breaking news, the results are in for Little Rock's special election. Let's go back to TV 11's Ashley Godwin at the Pulaski County Administrative Building to see what she's found out. Ashley?
Craig, Marlisa, the proposed sales tax that Mayor Frank Scott Jr. has worked so hard for this past year has failed. There were 38% who voted for the tax, 62% against, and the Election Commission has voted to accept those results, but they will meet again later to confirm those results. So again, it has failed. That's it for us tonight. Live in Little Rock, I'm Ashley Godwin.